And here we are. Hello, ladies.
Good evening.
Hello. Hi, Lucy.
Hi.
Hello, Natalie. Nat.
Thank
using
you.
your naughty name.
Yes.
So we are the Wyrde Sisters. It's Friday night. It's 8 p.m. UK time. And we are going to delve into all things Halloween. How many times am I going to do that tonight? God only knows. Those who might have tuned in on our sort of teaser show a couple of weeks ago will have met one of our other Wyrde sisters, Elisa. She is not with us this week. She's currently, I think, flying over the ocean, heading to Mexico. She's doing a spot of research out there, which I'm sure she's going to share with us when she's back. So safe flight, because she probably will catch this as when she lands later on. However, we have we have a very good friend of ours, a very good friend of mine of many, many years. And when I think of all things witchy and Halloween-esque, she's one of the first people that pops into my head. She is a phenomenal person. I'll let her introduce herself, but everybody watching, Elizabeth has joined the Wyrde Sisters. So hi, Liz. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So we are going to delve into Halloween, and the other name in which I refer to it is Samhain, but it's spelt differently and people always say it in different ways. So Liz, being our resident expert, Halloween we've got, but it's spelt Samhain, but we say Samhain. That's how I've always been brought up to say it. Am I saying it correctly?
Well, I pronounce it Samhain, but it depends on where you are as well, because people in Scotland will pronounce it with a V sound, so a Savin sound. So it really does depend on where you are, which part of the Celtic Gaelic area of the country you're in, really.
Awesome. Just going to say hello to some of our viewers. Hi, Joe. Hi, Joanne McCann. Hi, Susan. Hi. So let's get into it. Halloween. Where did it start? Why did it start? And how are we celebrating it? So in our house, growing up, my mum was a very celebrated mystic, white witch, wise lady, and we always celebrated Halloween like it was the biggest festival, biggest high holiday. And mum would shower the house with apples and all crazy stuff. And I just thought she was a bit bonkers. But it was always a really big deal in our house. So we started celebrating it way before the 31st. So my question to the girls is, how do you celebrate Halloween in your home? Nat?
Well, Halloween in my family is my mum's birthday.
Woo! Happy birthday, Nat's mum. Oh,
yes.
There you go.
So my Auntie Muriel will be 105 on the 31st of October.
Oh, that's so wonderful.
Always been associated for me and our family really with my mum's birthday. So it's a kind of a double celebratory thing. So I think really in our family, certainly when my two boys were young, it was the time where they all wanted to get dressed up and go and, you know, get bags and bags of sweets off everybody and, you know, do that trick or treat thing. I think it's a fabulous time for kids, you know, to do the jack-o'-lanterns and the trick-or-treating and things like that. But for me, sort of as I've got older, really, it's been that time of the year where that veil is thinnest, so they say. Yeah. So obviously Halloween, to me, being sort of like into the paranormal and the ghosty, spooky person that I am, has always been about ghosts and ghouls and all things spooky. You know, as well as the things for the kids and the more sort of commercial side of Halloween that we see. So that's birthday celebrations mainly,
but with a bit of spookiness on top. It's so interesting when I was thinking about this show and the fact that we were all getting together in Halloween's, you know, literally a couple of days away. The symbology of Halloween that we you know, we're all familiar with, the black cat, the apple, the pumpkin, you know, the witch, all of these things, we just take it as a given. But these symbols have like really strong meaning, and they're really rooted in the tradition that goes back to sort of the Celtic or Celtic, whatever you say, times. So Liz, being our resident witch for the night, it's always been my understanding that Halloween sort of came as a result of the ancient festival, the Celtic festival of Samhain. Is that right? Is that where it stemmed from in your belief system? You know, I know it to have come around many, many years ago, and it's shot off. And as Nat said, it's got very commercialized now, but it's got its roots in something very ancient. Is that right?
Well, you've kind of opened a big can of worms there, really, because yes, it's one of the 4 quarter festivals.
The witch, sorry, would you just come a bit closer to the mic, Liz, so our listeners
and it was
hear?
celebrated in ancient Ireland, yes. However, there's not many records of how they celebrated it or what it was celebrated about. So a lot of what we practice today is things that we've kind of pulled into it from seasonal observations and things like that as well. Because obviously we know it's around the time of the harvest. Yeah. So that all comes into it and that all plays with it.
Just to cut across, haven't we just had the harvest full moon? That was...
We have, yes. Yeah. Yeah, that was earlier this month, I think it was, wasn't it? Yeah. But yeah, there's not much record in Scottish or Welsh records of Samhain. In Ireland, most of the records were actually written during the time of that crossover between Celtic paganism and Celtic Christianity. So a lot of them records are also second-hand records. So people think the name comes from Sam for summer, Fuin for end, so summer end, whereas others take it from, I think the word was Samhain. And that meant assembly or gathering. So it was a gathering or an assembly at that time of year. And now we do have records of that taking place in Ireland. So we do know that around Samhain they did gather, they did have assemblies. But what they did during them assemblies, we're still a little bit unsure on, really. There's a lot of conflicting information depending on the sources you look at. So yeah. It was mentioned
quite mysterious then. It comes from, there's a bit of mystique in the mystique itself. That's so interesting. I was very lucky. I don't know if it was last year or the year before. I think it was 2 years ago, Lucy. We came to your house for a bit of Halloween fun, didn't we? And I know you like to celebrate it. So in your family and Halloween to you, Lucy, you know, how do you celebrate it? What's important to you about the festival itself?
For me, I come from an Irish and a Scottish heritage, both from my dad's side. And he was the one who sort of passed a lot of this stuff on to me. I think a lot of it came from my grandmother, who was Irish, from Southern Ireland. But there's definitely Scottish roots in it as well, like the guising. That was like a big thing. They're getting dressed up. And to me, that's the root of that is in the veil's thin. There's more entities about. You disguise yourself so they don't know who you are. So everyone's kind of like your identity is hidden, and your identity being like an important part of if somebody say wanted to hex you or put a bad some kind of bad energy on you. If they don't know who you are, or they can't spot you, then it was that kind of idea.
Was that something around the phrase souling? I believe when I was looking into a little bit, it was something around souling, which was around the guys in souling is a word that cropped up, but it's the first time I've sort of heard that. So it's like a protection thing. That's why people dressed up to ward off. Wow.
It was the protection from the getting dressed up. The trick or treating, the giving the treats again is another one of those. It's leaving something out for the fairies. So it's like, you know, that's essentially the root of that. And I always liked that sort of history of it. But for me, the heart of it is always the ancestors. So we always would light a candle and put it in the window, and I still do that, you know, to guide any ancestors back in. On my altar, I have photographs of loved ones who've passed over. And we would also, this is another tradition that I still do, on Samhain night itself, when you're having your meal, you serve a meal for the departed. Yes. So to me, it wasn't like, oh, spooky. It was like, no, we love these people and we're remembering them, and we talk about them, ones who've passed over. My children never got to meet my dad. He passed away shortly before I got married. So I tell them about him, you know, different things, stories and that kind of thing. And my grandma and my nana, you know, and all these loved ones. And it just sort of brings them back, not in a trying to draw them back from anywhere, but just, you know,
to acknowledge.
There's a place in our hearts for them. It's still here and they're welcome. You know, it's that kind of thing, because it is that thinning of the veil. There's that moment, isn't there, this time of year? So that, and also divination was always a big one. And it's funny how, you know, you look back at little childhood traditions, it's things like, oh, peel the apple and throw it over your shoulder and see what, that stuff. It's like, yeah, divination. Loads of different things like that. There are all things like throwing hazelnuts in the fire.
Yes.
We didn't get to do that because we didn't have proper fires, but I remember my dad telling me, you see which ones pop, and there was like all kinds of stuff along with that. So now as well, I take that further. I'll do like a tower of spread, or, you know, things like that. You know,
so interesting. It's just so interesting as you're sort of talking about what your traditions in your family. It's thrown me back to being a little girl, and as soon as it got to twilight in our house, my mum wouldn't allow any electricity on. So we had a big roaring fire. Because she was so mystical and a little bit weird, we didn't know what characters were going to turn up. So there would always be some, you know, interesting person that turn up. All electrics would be off. We'd have a roaring fire, and she would save apple pips. So maybe Liz could maybe unpack it for me, because you know, when you just got a memory, she would save the pips of the apple all through October, and then towards sort of the witching hour, like she would call it, we would throw them into the fire. And I've never really looked into why we kept the pips. Is that a thing, Liz? Or was it just my mum being as mystical as she always was? Is there a tradition around pips? Well, I know apples are certainly a big symbol, but my mum particularly used to keep the pips.
Well,
I don't know what that's about.
Samhain is very associated with seed falling. So seed falling to the ground. And it's that symbolism of regeneration, rebirth after the darkness that's coming and everything. It's all symbology, really. So that is a great symbol, keeping the seeds and then casting them aside. She may have like embedded them seeds with a thought process and intention or something she wanted to get rid of, casting them away. But it all adds in together. Like, that's all like layers of an onion, really, isn't it?
It sure is. When I was thinking about this show, the other night, I was thinking of all the symbols and that stood out to me, and apple was one of the first symbols that was on my checklist.
It has a natural pentacle inside it, doesn't it?
It does. I was just about to say, it's associated with the goddess, and the triple goddess form is naturally a part of that as well, which is also a big emphasis of the Samhain celebrations, because you start going into the dark half of the year, because the old Irish used to split it into two halves.
Yeah.
So you had the dark half and you had the light half. and it was 2 sections of the year. So they were the key festivals that fell on either side of the dark half and the light half. So yeah, there was a lot of celebration around them times of year, a lot of symbology. And they were preparing for the winter ahead, hunkering down, getting the harvest in, saving the seeds for the next spring as well, and obviously some seeds over winter. So yeah, they were doing things like that. So there was a lot of seed saving going on at this time of year too.
Interesting. We always used to, my mum always used to drum a lot as well. And I was quite lucky that, well, not lucky. My mum left this realm a couple of years ago at Yule. And I've just received her ceremonial drum. So it hasn't been in my possession since she passed over. But the actual drum itself that she's weaved her magic into, I think she got it off a traveling wise person in Southern Ireland when we were on one of our mystical journeys, and it's downstairs. And for me, this year, I'm going to drum, because it was that drum that we drummed when we were a kid, and one wonders, because we talk of the veil being thin. Does sound permeate that veil? And maybe it's my opportunity, because the veil is thin, that I might have my connection to my mum in a little bit more than the everyday, which it takes me onto the paranormal side of Halloween, which I'm sure Nat has got some experiences with. She does, like, I'm going to rephrase what I was about to say there. You knew what I was about to say, so I'm not going to say. So Natalie, things that go bump in the night, Halloween, Samhain.
Yes.
Have you ever had any experiences with the paranormal during this time? I know we've off camera, we've talked about the veil being thin, and what a great time it is to connect with those that have departed and speak to our ancestors. But tell us any experience that you might have had during this time in the past.
Yeah, well, going back to when I first sort of got into the paranormal, my first sort of paranormal experiences, if you would call it that, was at this time of the year. I think it was about 3 days before Halloween when I first saw out of the corner of my eye this strange shadowy being move. Bizarre experience ever, but that was very close to Halloween. So certainly that sort of spooky spiritual side, as we keep saying, that veil is that thin at this time of year. So there's definitely more that's going on in sort of like the paranormal field during this time. You're able to, well, certainly I'm able to pick up a bit more at this time of the year, and see and interpret things a little bit differently than perhaps at other times of the year. Which is good, I suppose, because it makes my job as a paranormal investigator a little bit easier when that veil is thinnest. But yeah, my first ever paranormal experience was a few days before Halloween. So
wow. I am desperate, and I can't because my blinking broken leg. But it's this time of year when I really want to get out into very misty graveyards, and feel that veil thinning. And it's interesting that those of us that would describe themselves as more sensitive, that even if you're not necessarily into some of the areas that we are, because we're all into different areas of a wider phenomenon. Promise, I'm not going to start talking about aliens the entire time. Promise. That article in the New York Times has sent me crazy today. Anyway, not getting into it, it's Halloween. But those of us that are more sensitive, we feel it in different ways. And what's been really interesting to me, because I can't get out, I've really wanted to pick up my tarot cards a bit more. I've wanted to look at my rune stones a bit more. And I wonder, and it's a question, Joe, 5D, agree with you, it is all connected. My question is, do we think that maybe muggles, those that aren't into the magic and the that we're into, do you think that everyday people pick up on something as well? Do you think the energy is that powerful that it does something? What do you think, Lucy?
Yeah, absolutely, I do. I notice it a lot more, and I have been noticing it more recently. There's this real reaching people have got, I think, a lot more, even over the last few years, where they're looking for something. They're not quite sure what it is, but there's something. They're picking up on it. Like, for example, we all know that probably the astrology's been fairly heavy the last, well, it seems like forever, actually. But we've got a lot of like retrogrades and eclipses and that kind of stuff, and it's kind of tiring. And all I'm hearing from people is, oh gosh, I haven't been sleeping, or I've been having mad dreams, or I'm so tired. You know, loads of different things, and loads of people having like migraine, headaches, that kind of stuff. And I think people are experiencing it. They're just not, they're not sure what it is, but they are picking up on it. You know, and like I said, there's this reaching, this desire to know about it. I think people are looking for it, and they're open to it. If you mention something like that, they're quite interested. You know.
Agree. I think it's time of the year when, you know, I know I probably should stop saying muggles, but I think you know what I mean. I need another word. I don't know what is another word. Anyway, those people that perhaps aren't as into it as we are, there seems to be a more level of openness to discuss the weird and the strange, because this time of year is when all the horror movies are on the telly, the commerciality of Halloween, you know. When I was looking into a bit of research for tonight's show, I was talking to my partner, and you know, I've got pumpkins all over my house. I'm ready to carve them with my beautiful niece on Saturday. And Chris said to me, "Fucking hell, we just got a turnip when we were kids." And I thought to myself, actually, when did pumpkins come into the mix? Because I remember having this mouldy arse turnip on a piece of string, and it's smelling like singed hair because my mum had put a candle in it, and it was quite grotesque put together. And I thought, so because I didn't grow up where Chris grew up, so I thought, am I from very different family backgrounds? I thought, well, maybe the turnip was a thing, and actually looking into it, it is. Let me just pull up this thing.
We used to have a Swede, and they are really hard, because I insisted a few years ago that we got a Swede to carve.
They're really
so hard to carve.
I had Tyler carve me one earlier, and Megan.
I remember
like, that's enough.
I think my mum would get about that far down into it, effing blind, cut a triangle in and go, it's done. But when I was looking into it, it was probably lost it now.
I can remember my
first the origins of the turnips in there.
It comes from something, and because I need to find it,
There's a couple of things where turnips can come into it from.
So it's based apparently, and listeners, viewers, you know, if we're wrong, shoot it down. Just wanted to say to one of our viewers, Louise, who was a really good friend of my mum. So thank you so much for joining the show. And yeah, it's nice to see her. But the pumpkins, it's based on a legend, apparently, about a man named Stingy Jack, who repeatedly trapped the devil and only let him go on the condition that Jack would never go to hell. But when Jack died, he learned that heaven did not want his soul, so he was forced to wander the earth for a ghost's eternity. Bum, bum, bum! The devil gave Jack a burning lump of coal in a carved-out turnip to light his way. Locals and people eventually began carving scary faces into their own turnips to frighten away evil spirits. So I didn't know that. I didn't know that till this week. So that mouldy arse turnip was actually rooted in a tradition, which I just love these threads.
That legend comes again from that crossover time period from Celtic paganism to Celtic Christianity. Wow. Before that, you had the Maca Masts. And Maca is one of the goddesses of the triple goddess form with Morrigan. And she is a bit of a war goddess. She's all about sovereignty of the self, sovereignty of the land, agriculture, fertility. But yes, she was a war goddess. And in her honor, they would take the heads of their enemies, put them in like a little cubby hole in the house that like set
Nice.
aside for heads of enemies, because every Celtic house had to have one of them, you know. as you
Remind me
do.
to get one.
And they believed the soul was actually kept inside the pineal gland in the head. So that's why they take the heads of their enemies and they take the souls, and that would disconnect their enemies from their ancestral spirits and the ancestral land spirits, so cause chaos among the other tribes that they were warring with. But they were called Macamas, and they used to their children used to make heads out of root veg in honor of Maca as well. So that's another aspect of it that comes through.
Isn't that phenomenal? And guys and gals, aliens, entities and beings that are listening and watching, I was so keen to get Elizabeth with us this week, because her knowledge is, she's like, you know, we have conversations at 3 o'clock in the morning quite often, don't we, Liz, about everything crazy. So I felt this was and sorry to put the spotlight on you right now, my love, but I just wanted to let those listening and watching know a little bit more about you. So I asked Liz if she'd put a bit of a bio together, and, you know, you hate writing about yourself. So she sent me something over. So I'll say it and then I'll dig into it. So Liz Elizabeth Ann, she is a fam-trad eclectic pagan since early teen years. And I definitely know that to be true, because I know her beautiful mum and her family. A Norse shamanic hedge-witch with heavy Celtic leanings. And what is it that you're currently studying, Liz? Because you've got like that many blooming qualifications. It's unreal.
I'm currently studying a BSc in clinical herbalism at the minute.
Wowzers. So I asked you just before we came on air, what the hell does fam-trad mean? I thought it was because as the girls know, and those watching who know me personally, autocorrect does me dirty. Like Natalie, I've got to stop calling Natalie. How many times do I message you and I just can't get the words out? I'm just
Several times.
So I was like, fam-trad, what the flip does that mean? So, Liz, what does fam-trad mean?
It basically just means where it's become a bit of a family tradition, where there's multi-generations within the one family that practice paganism.
Wow. Dun, dun, dun. On our last show, me and Liz were sort of giggling about it, because I think the last time, the topic that shall not be named, the last time I think I saw you properly in person, fully, I think we've dropped things off each other's houses. We were in Delamere Forest, were we not?
Yes,
like
we were.
4:30 in the morning, like that. What were we celebrating?
We're doing a summer solstice ritual.
Summer solstice, for that. I think me and Lisa were like shot and coffee, like Thelma and Louise in it, all the way into the woods. So I've been so lucky that I've done many ceremonies with Liz and other women that we know, and you know, one better, Elizabeth actually blessed my child and named him of the old ways, and I sometimes forget that you've played that role in my life. Anyway, I'm talking about myself too much. So, we've had a question from Joe 5D about your lovely hair colour, Elizabeth. Is that your hair colour for a reason other than preference?
No,
purple.
I just like the colour purple, I guess. I change it all the time, to be honest with you.
Lucy as well does that, and Nat does that. I think I'm the only one that stays with the same colour hair. So come into colours. See what I did there. Well, hey. So you know, we see on the television, we see on all the horror movies, you only have to go to one of these big branded stores and there's black and orange everywhere. Is that for a reason? Is the colour rooted in something? What do you think, Lucy?
I think, I don't know if Liz will agree with me, orange is more recent. I think that's maybe more of it that's come from pumpkins. Black is traditional because to me, we're heading into the time of year where the goddess is taking on the crone aspect. So black is associated with her. And then dark green and like dark red for me this time of year. Again, where you're looking at the colours of the goddess and the god, and it is moving into that. She's taking on the crone aspect. So I think there are traditional colours think there's anything necessarily wrong with orange, because you could take that as a seasonal colour. You know, we do see a lot of that around us.
Autumnal.
But for me, it is more recent that it's like a Samhain colour. You know, I think, like I say, black, dark green, maybe dark red.
I heard a vicious rumour that you might be getting a green cloak, my friend.
I lost it.
Oh no!
I missed it.
Darn it.
I wanted it so much and I just missed it.
Well, as we all know,
my sniping app didn't work. Be amazed to hear.
Well, it will come when it's meant to come.
Yeah.
Pardon?
Can I chip in on the orange?
Of course you can.
Thanks. But
Floor is yours.
Scientific, orange has been proven to increase appetite and be an appetite stimulant. So when we're talking about orange being around Halloween and the sort of like festivities with it and sort of like that ceremonial fruit and harvest, etc., there could be a possible link there. So yeah, if you paint orange in the kitchen, people will eat your food. For those people who are not good cooks, there's a little tip for you.
There we go. There we go. Just reminded me of a time, and Chris will go mad because I'm saying this publicly. I came home once and Chris had painted the ceilings of our house blue for no other reason that you just seen it on Pinterest. So please don't mention that when you're in my house, because I don't want to come back to an orange kitchen. So done that one. So here's a question for you ladies. I was thinking about this a lot this week. Why, and I'm sure the historian side of you all, why on earth I know the answer, by the way, but it's something to discuss. Why have witches or wise women been painted as these devil women? Why throughout, now there's been a resurgence in Wicca, paganism, and it's more palatable. In fact, I'm sure, Elizabeth, you'll agree, probably about 10, 15 years ago, it was quite cool to be a bit witchy, and it really had, a big resurgence again. But why, how, where, what, when? When did the wise woman become the woman that was evil? Where did that narrative come from? I know it stems from way back when, but could you where does that come from and why? What do you know about that? And I will go to Liz.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there, really, and a lot of crossover issues again.
We've got 2 hours, Liz. 2 hours. 2 hours.
So I'll try and keep it a bit brief and as simple as I can, really. So obviously, the crone woman was wise. She was the archetypal woman, the matriarch of the community. She would look after her community. She would be the healer. She would deliver the babies. She had all that ancient knowledge, really, that she would pass on to the community. And there's a lot of reasons why that was then vilified.
Church.
And we've got to remember that a lot of these women who were persecuted weren't actually witches. They weren't practicing witches. They were just general women who were opinionated, outspoken, fierce, strong women that stood for their beliefs. And they were persecuted and called witches because that would tie it into that church, the Christian crossover again, where that came in. Because initially, when the Christian church came in, they kept the mediums on the altar. They kept the wise woman there. They had the goddess figure very, very involved. Celtic Christianity had the sacred feminine embedded into its very core.
Of course,
and they honored that. And then obviously as the more masculine aspects started to come in, they pushed out the more feminine aspects of the sacred path that they had. So that's kind of where it came from, and that crossover there. They were kind of taking advantage of each other, really. The political scenario at the time of trying to oppress women, keep them in their place, and also the religious aspects of trying to make it a more masculine energy and so on, really. And it all just added together. They took advantage of each other, and that enabled them to really sink their teeth in and attack the female population, really.
I wonder how many, and it's more of a rhetorical question. How many women who were just knowledgeable in herbology. They were able to birth the babies. They were able to heal the sick. They were able to douse for water. They were able to read the stars, you know, stuff that we all enjoy and have knowledge of. But how many just women that had a talent for something, you know, were burnt, or because they were drowned a lot, weren't they, in history? They would drown them to see if they would survive. Not really the most scientific method, but, you know, there's, you know, thousands of women were just lost through some weird patriarchal. I'm going to start burning my bra now, aren't I? And
I was reading something about this recently, which was like a whole new concept for me, because I'd always thought these were like, as we've talked about, they're individual women, maybe the village wise woman, or, you know, that kind of stuff, along with women who were just not involved at all, because the whole method of accusing a witch essentially led to more accusations. You know, they would torture them until they spat out some names. It's horrible, you know.
Just so you know, I'd never give any of yous up.
But there's actually apparently, and again, I wish I could remember where I'd found this now. It's like one of those, you know, you find those sort of threads and those information. And I can't remember now which of my many groups it was in. But it was organized. These women, especially over in mainland Europe, it was like an underground railroad where they were trying to get this written herbal law and medicine, trying to keep it away, because apparently the church was trying to get hold of it and stuff it into, you know, the Vatican archives essentially, but so they would have control. And these women who had, you know, if you can heal people, I mean, we only have to look at like the status of doctors still today. You know, if you can heal people, you have power. If you own in your own property, you're in charge in that way. You couldn't push women down to the extent that we were if you don't take that power away. But apparently it was organized, and it was actively tried to be stamped out. And this was like a whole new concept for me, that women actually, it wasn't just victimhood. It wasn't just the women were minding their own business and then this happened to them without them really knowing. It was, they knew what was happening. They were trying to fight against it. You know, it just really incredibly powerful. But we can circle back to witch trials and the witch wound later on if you like.
I just want to go Salem right now. Let's go.
And think about it as well. The other big clue for me in this is we don't know who almost any of these women were. You know, Scotland, thousands of more women were burned in Scotland as witches, I think, than anywhere else.
Really?
We know the names of like a tiny handful. You know, they were absolutely, completely erased. You know, and this is like 50% of the population were persecuted in this way, and we just kind of don't acknowledge it. Almost, it was genocide. You know, it was awful. It was this huge kind of murder and destruction of so many different things. You know, what the kind of knowledge that we've lost from that. And the effect it had for hundreds of years. It turned women into property. It turned women from being powerful leaders of a community into being things owned by their father or husband, you know, and not able to own property of your own. You know, up until like the 1960s, you had to get your husband's permission to get a bank loan, you know, to do these different things. It's like when we say this had a huge impact. I don't, you know, there are women alive today who, you know, were still impacted by a lot of this. I think the witch wound is also something to move on to, where women will tend now to see each other as competition, as a threat to resources. And I think it comes from that, where, you know, mothers would accuse daughters because they were being tortured. You know, that has seeped into almost our collective unconscious, and it's created a huge problem. I think the witch trials are a hidden part of our history that really need to be dragged out and looked at properly, and brought into the mainstream.
I think calling them the witch trials kind of minimizes them in a way, because people don't associate witches as real. So it desensitizes them. It doesn't associate them as being, oh, these were women who were tortured, beaten, and just sometimes whole villages lost every woman of age. Like, they were all just completely wiped out and murdered, and nobody talks about it. And when they do, it's about it being a witch trial, and the
I've
way
got
you deliver it,
goosies.
you don't really get into the nitty-gritty, that persecution and that oppression at all.
Sad. It's not, sad's not even the right word. And I feel that this is a particular topic on its own, and I think maybe we should really revisit it as a standalone again one time, because I've looked into various bits and I get very upset. It visibly like moves me, and I don't want to look at that horror and the tragedy of it. And actually, you both raise a really, really outstanding point that it should actually be discussed. So we're all out here celebrating Halloween. I very nearly was sat here dressed as a black cat until about 4 hours ago. The fun and the frivolity of sewing and the rituals of it and the fun and the let's watch Hocus Pocus and eat sweets. But actually, there's a real dark side. I don't even know if that's the right word to use. There's a real chapter in this novel that's really, 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 really horrific. And go on.
And glossed over.
Yeah. Wow. And
I grew up in Lancaster, where the Pendle Witch trials happened. So I've been around Lancaster Castle, where they were all held. And again, they were matriarchs, at least two of the elder ones. And then it was just, we've got a couple and tortured them, and now we've got 50 more names. It was, you read into that, and it's one of the very few well publicized where they've got names of the women, where the women have not been erased because they are there. And you read about them, and it's horrific, just awful. I mean, and that was as well was towards the end of when they were doing this kind of thing, and the fact that even towards the end, when people weren't really kind of into it anymore, they were still quite happy to just take them and imprison them and torture them and then hang them. It's just it beggars belief that this went on, and people aren't kind of that there aren't statues to these women or some kind of
absolutely
basic acknowledgement of their humanity and the fact they were so badly treated.
I feel empowered to look at this in some way. Do you remember, Lucy, when we ended up on that wild goose chase in Pendle?
Oh yeah.
Sorry to minimise what we were just talking about.
We were walking around, and it was like a talk. It was on, this is where the Pendle Witches lived, and I'm at the back going, actually no, it was this, and their name was that, and this happened.
We just these two. We it was just sort of, I think, when we could first start getting back out again, or before whatever, and I'd seen it bobbed up on socials. And so let's go do something. So me, another friend of ours, Lucy, we went off in my little car up to Pendle, and I thought, God, this is going to be really, great, and we connect with some of that energy, and knowing the little I do about the Pendle Witches, and I was quite keen to get there, and we got there, and there was these sort of two young girls with a torch, like, hiya, let's take her on a walk, and literally everywhere we got, Lucy went, well, that's incorrect. Well, no, they're out by about 4 decades. Well, no, that's really not correct. So in the end, I think at one point, I think we started leading the people.
I'm the worst person to have on a tour, I really am.
It was great for me because I was getting the real information, and this lends itself to your paranormal investigation. They had no actual professional investigative tools. They had that app on your phone that just goes, hello, ghost. So I'm like, I put it on mine, going, pay 20 quid, I'll play along. Lucy's got the tour guide bit sorted. I'll do the machine bit. These women hated us.
I can imagine.
I was like pressing it, and it was like tree, evil, dead. And I was like, I think we've broke the tour. But that just shows again the glossing over. Oh, fireworks! That just shows the glossing over of it. That now in Pendle, and these people, great people, are earning a living, cool. But it really just made me think then that Pendle's just, it's a money-making thing. You kind of go there, stand with a woman who makes a phone call, ooh, and actually the acknowledgement of what really happened there and the energetic signature that I felt something there. It felt dark, it felt sad, it felt lethargic in a way. And, I believe that energy has a signature and it beds itself into the very fabric of the environment. And it was interesting that these two poor girls were just like, please leave. And maybe we should go up ourselves, ladies.
Yeah.
We'll have to go around Lancaster Castle as well. You'll feel the energy around there.
Definitely. Talking about how sort of, witchcraft, witches, and the resurgence it had in closer times. I don't know if you girls have been there yet, but Dion Fortune's grave is in Glastonbury town. So I don't know if you've seen it when you've done a pilgrimage to it. So it was, for those that are watching, listening, Glastonbury is a really magical place for a lot of us that follow the old ways. It's a place of mystique and mystery. It's on 2 ley lines. There's tales of Arthurian legends there. Apparently King Arthur's buried there. Joseph of Arimathea planted his staff on one of the hills. You have the White Well, the Red Well, Chalice Well, and you have Glastonbury Tor. But Dion Fortune was actually, buried there. And Sybil Leek used to spend some time there, I believe. So with the resurgence of Wicca, paganism, is there any sort of standout figures in your, your area of this that interest you? Mine certainly is sort of, I'm obsessed with Sybil Leek. And I have been for an enormous amount of time. Is there anyone in sort of modern day witchiness that speaks to you, Liz?
So you're talking about modern day people who are still alive now? Yeah,
it's sort of, over the past, 100 years, because I think witchcraft became, or Wicca or paganism, because there's so many different offshoots, but the unseen arts, shall we say, and the followers of the old ways, regardless of what path that you take, did make quite it comes in cycles. You had Crowley, you had Gerald Gardner, you have all of these different figures, but from a sort of female-led witchy perspective. Sybil Leek, to me, was one of the standout witches of sort of the time. So, is there anyone that is, that tickles your pickle?
It's hard to say. There's so many great authors out there who I've really connected with over the years, to be honest with you. I'm trying to think back now, because with it being an umbrella term, there's so many. It depends on which path you're down, which authors I'd recommend to each individual person, to be honest with you. For example, if somebody was starting off on a solitary path, I'd probably mention Scott Cunningham, because he's a really good one for the solitary practitioner to delve into and get stuck into.
And this is practitioner of Wicca.
He practices Wicca, Scott Cunningham, and then you've got people like Anna Franklin. She's amazing. Her knowledge is fantastic. Some of her books are amazing. She really ties together the folk world with the spiritual world as well. She brings it all in. So you've got all the pagan traditions there, as well as the folk medicine coming in too, because she's very into her herbs as well. And like the energetics of the herb as well. She incorporates all that into her practices, the correspondences. So she's another great author to look into as well. And then obviously there's so many.
So many. You know what? As you say,
can I add one? Can I Lisa Lister? If anybody's heard.
What haven't we spoke about?
Probably, and she's fantastic. She's written loads of books. They are so like a conversation.
Digestible,
very very easy to kind of swallow in one gulp, essentially, but so relatable, so empowering as well. I think she writes it very much as going, you're the magic, how do you want to express yourself? Here's some suggestions, but very much putting the sovereignty back in your hands. I love the way she writes and the stuff she does. She's worth looking up on Instagram if you haven't seen. I think she's on there.
Well, we've spoke about this offline, because we, our friend circles, especially, around this time of Halloween and October, we all start digging out, have you looked at this? What about this? How are you marking? So I think we're probably going to do a bit of another book club at some point and start sharing our respective libraries. My love of sort of anything witchy, we'll call it, is definitely stemmed from my mother. And when I was about, and this is an interesting tale of synchronicity. When I was about 13, 14, my mum gave me Sybil Leek's first book, and the name's completely gone, Diary of a Witch. And it was, I think it was a first edition or something. It was a really, really, you can't buy them now. Well, you can, but they're like £600-700. And I read it, and it was kind of a bit of initiation into the unseen. And I treasured that book, like I mean, treasured it with my whole heart. Fast forward to a couple of years ago when my mum died. One of her phenomenal friends, a beautiful woman, gave me a book. When I opened the book, it was the book, and it had made its journey round lots of different women, lots of people that Mum had known, and her friend. And I got that book back. And I think, we've spoke about it, Lucy, how I wanted it, because it's so fragile, and I think they're going for like £600-700 on eBay now, that you just, everyday people can't get them as such. I was going to photocopy to pass on to your daughter. And I think there's always a thing around women and Halloween, and there is a female thread. Well, look what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Point and cakes. I feel I feel like I want to go and dance under a full moon completely naked, but I just don't think Chris would be into that one.
Yeah, like kind of smeared in mud and just like screaming naked, that kind of vibe. That's kind of where I'm feeling as well.
Yeah, I'm into it. Has anyone ever read the book The Mists of Avalon?
Yes.
No.
Lucy, Nat, you will. I think, how do we even explain it? It really draws in like the Arthurian legends, the Lady of the Lake in Avalon. It just pulls in so many threads of what we respectively all like within this sphere. And I think we should add that to the book club. So one thing that you girls know, I've always had a black cat. Always. And growing up, we always had a cat. We always had a black cat. I can't remember a time when we didn't. And my mom always had an animal that was like her animal. Like it was vicious to everyone else. And it was her. Throughout history, cats have always got a bit of a bad rep. And what is the association with cats and wise women and witches? Where does that come about, Natalie, Liz, Lucy?
I think they probably have to point us in the direction of that, really. I've never had a cat personally, even though, I'm a witchy person.
Get a cat. You get a cat, and then when you don't want it, I'll have to take it. That's the only way I'll get another one in.
I know, you tried to leave with one of my kittens, didn't you? And
tried, unsuccessfully. Your children were like,
yeah. I think the thing with cats, I think they have a lot of perceptions that we don't. So I think they're natural witches almost. When I start, I think I may have mentioned this last time. If I start doing energy healing, the cats are at the door immediately just to see what I'm doing. They do know when something's going on. And there's loads of stories as well of them seeing something that the rest of us can't, like places that are haunted. So I suspect that they just have a wider range of vision on things, So that may be where that comes in.
There's a lot of symbology with cats as well.
There was
a lot of history and symbology with cats as well. For example, you've got Bast, which is where the Egyptian Kemetic path come in. Cats are very, very sacred. They were mummified a lot of the times as well. I mean, they were so worshipped. and they were seen as guardians and watchers of the hearth and home.
Yes.
And they're linked to a lot of goddesses as well, such as Freya. You've got, obviously, I've already mentioned Bast. I'm trying to think now off the top of my head. You've even got Celtic goddesses who are linked to cats as well. Like a lot of the triple goddess forms will have cat familiars and stuff like that mentioned in their lore, especially all the half goddesses and goddesses of the home and healing. You tend to see like cats in the background of images of them and in the background of the homes too. They were just seen as fierce protectors, I guess, because they are quite territorial animals in a way, I suppose. And they do see, they do feel, and they are very sensitive to energies and everything like that.
100%. They really are. We were chatting the other day. For those that know me personally, know I've got a comical cat called Brian.
Love Brian.
We like Brian, but he's the cuddliest serial killer you've ever come across. And I was in hospital for a number of weeks, and the cat had started like really behaving strange. It started like urinating in places it never had before. It went all a bit like sketchy. It was totally vibed in the wrong way. It cost me a couple of £100. We got it to the vet. It was like, my cat's broken. Help. What's going on? And there was nothing. The vets were like, he's stressed, and nothing had changed, we thought, to the cat's life. But we were talking it through in the car the other day. And actually, I'd been out of the home. I'm the matriarch of our home. I am probably most with the cats because I'm an animal person. We'd had to move the house round, so the energy of the house had changed because I was no longer sleeping upstairs. I was downstairs. And his whole world, because they see on a different spectrum and they feel differently, his whole world had changed, and he was stressed, and he was marking safe places. And it really brought me back to the fact that they are protectors. They pick up on energies, and it's not that much of a reach that the wise women of back in the day of the ancient times would have a familiar that read energy the same way that she would. And I really do think there's a lot of magic around animals that we don't necessarily think of. I definitely need another cat now. Damn! Right, Nat, you're going to have to get a cat.
I love the way they're healers. Cats are healers as
They
well.
are.
Like they're purr. When you get into sound
The
frequency,
vibrations.
yeah, they come and they'll purr next to you when you're sad or ill, and it's to try and make you feel better. They do it for each other as well. For other cats, they'll go and purr next to each other, to try and make them better. And it does, doesn't it? If you're holding a cat and it's purring, you feel better. And then again, studies have gone into it where stroking your cat lowers your blood pressure and makes you better. They even have sort of like hospital animals, don't they? Like dogs. I don't know if they do it so much with cats, but they'll have like hospital pets where they go around for like children, particularly, or long-term residents, because it has such an amazing effect on the residents. Animals are fantastic to have around.
Just so much, isn't there, that and this relates to the wider phenomenon of whatever is going on. Nobody can tell me that all of the various different aspects of a wider phenomenon that we all are into and study and follow and live, it's all, again, as we said on our last show, we always end up back at energy. Everything is about an energetical signature. And I find, we're watching all this Halloween festivity and, woo, 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 woo. But people are sort of celebrating an energy that they're just not switched on to yet. And are we at a time in humanity where we're starting to switch on a little bit more? Are people feeling things a little bit more? Because I'm starting to notice now, I've got friends that are not into anything, weird. What are you doing for Halloween? Or, what do you do? Like, we're all sat under like in a basement, like, doing weird. Well, yeah, probably some of us are. But do you think that the more like these topics are discussed and the more that Halloween and Samhain is plated differently, do you think it will attract people to delve into it? Us talking about it tonight may make someone want to look into it a bit more. Do you think Halloween it's segue for people to maybe look in further to the wider weirdness, perhaps, Natalie? I've got to stop calling you Natalie. She's well going to tell me off after this. Sorry.
All right. I think definitely, yeah, there's definitely that sort of like, it's more accessible for people these days. It's okay to say, actually, I want to go and look at that, or I want to learn about that. It's not sort of good as much as it was a few years ago. But what still fascinates me is the way that witches or Wiccan is portrayed in the media these days, because it's still portrayed with that very negative light. All of us witches are old biddies with, you know, warts on our faces and little hats and the rest of it. It's never really portrayed in a positive way,
No.
being something that can really sort of like promote femininity, you know, the female form, and all of the great things that us as women can do, you know, and how strong we are. It's very much portrayed as witches are bad, witches cast spells on people, you know, their heads blow off and stuff. And
If only.
Or
Disclaimer, I didn't mean that.
Think about the film The Craft as well. That's a very similar way to that, where, oh yeah, look, they've got power and they're you know, young witches, but oh, the power corrupts and now they've all gone crazy, and you know, that kind of thing. It is, you're right, it's still negative, I think, really.
It is bad, and a friend of mine has been going through one of the most awfulest times in their life. And I remember, you know, one night, very, very upset. Can't you just do a spell on this and it will go away? And I was like, that's not how it works.
no,
It doesn't work like that. And unfortunately, that's what the media and the narrative has painted it to be, that we were all sat round the cauldron and we can, you know, we can hex you. And of course, there is the dark side to witchcraft and the occult, and the unseen. Of course there is, because there's duality. Without good, there's no bad. Without light, there's no dark. You've got to have the duality. And Nat, you're so right. And so you, Lucy, that it's painted, you know, witchcraft is this like, you know, evil thing, when actually it can be the most beautiful, empowering. And I was talking about this years ago with a family member who was like, this is all weird shit, what you doing? And I was like, do you sing happy birthday to your child? Do you light candles, blow them out, and then make a wish? Yeah. So you've done a spell then? What? So you've done a spell then? So when you sneeze, do you say bless you? Yeah. Do you throw salt over your shoulder? Yeah. So where has this like well, we know where the demonization has come from, but how is it still here? It just really utterly surprises me. What's your favourite witchy film, Liz?
Oh, my favourite witchy film. I've got a few, actually. I love The Wicker Man for obvious reasons.
On that man there was a tree, and on that tree there was a man. If anyone's not seen it, it's watch it. It's amazing. It's one of the best cult films. And just to gag in, when it was my mum's funeral at Yule, that was the song that she played out with. On that man there was the tree, and on that tree, and everyone was like that. Oh, you know, brilliant film. So anyone watching, they want to watch a really spooky, weirdy. How would you describe it, Liz?
Like a culty type thing,
Weird.
isn't it? Again, it's not really all about like portraying it in a good light or anything like that. But for an empowering one, I'd probably say, like, I don't know, something like Practical Magic or something, because you get that sisterhood, the empowering, them all coming together, and it's a nice positive ending, and they're not evil. They can handle the power eventually, and you know, none of all that stuff that usually comes into other like media programs that you watch about witchcraft and stuff. Yeah, so that for that message, really, I'd probably go with that one.
It's one of my. How many times have I messaged you, Lucy? Watching it again, do it again, because it's one of my favorite films. But That is another one of mine. Do you know what I will say? Well, we're on the subject of sort of Halloweeny films. Has everyone seen the new Hocus Pocus?
Yeah.
No, not.
No, I'm a horror gore buzz fan.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not a happy clappy hocusy pocusy person.
Like the scary ones.
I Halloween kills and
like Mike Myers type stuff.
Hellraiser.
So,
Open a wardrobe and a body falls out.
don't, because there's wardrobes like
sort
that.
of thing.
For someone who I love, like ghost hunting, paranormal investigations, love being out, sky watching and all that thing. I can't watch anything scary on the telly. You can put me in a pitch black room with poltergeist activity, and I'm like, this is absolutely amazing. But if there was a loud bang right now, I'd have a heart attack. Back to it. The reason why I mentioned Hocus Pocus 2 is I cried my arse off at the end of it because it made it good. It made it nice.
Yeah.
And it stopped it from being that narrative of witches are going to, eat your kids and all this terrible stuff. It actually came back to the universe's greatest power, which was love. As I watched how, my mum would be like, don't say in school that we were in a stone circle dancing because it's weird. We had to keep things a little bit on the QT. And I remember a kid coming to our house and my mum had wrote someone's name and put it in the sugar bowl. And the kid was like, what is your mum doing? I was like, yeah, do you want a bag of crisps? And I was constantly aware that, we did things in our home because my mum practiced her form of witchcraft that everyone else's home didn't, which brings me to my next question. In your home, especially at this time, but I would say all of us on here follow the wheel, the yearly cycle anyway, in some description. But in your home, what is, if a muggle came into your home now, would they pick up on some of your witchy, witchcrafty, pagan traditions? What do you do in your home, Lucy, that you would be comfortable to share?
Oh, well, putting people in the freezer, obviously.
Just a disclaimer in case there are no bodies in Lucy's freezer.
In the same way as your mum put people in the sugar bowl to sweeten them up,
You
which I
wrote
would
them on a
also
piece.
do. Piece of paper and a pot of water in the freezer. Stop hassling me. You're in the freezer. That kind of thing.
I've got a few people in there at the
That's
moment.
great. That really works. It's little things. I like the kitchen witching as well.
Yes.
And what I like about it is that sense of that would have been how people did it. You wouldn't have had a crystal ball. You'd have had a saucer with water in it.
Yes.
I like that aesthetic in some ways, but also it makes me feel a bit connected to those women who had to hide it. I don't have to. I could totally go all out if I want to because I'm totally safe to do it, especially now. I do have little things around the house for people who know what they're looking for. I think the most obvious one, I have like a little witch figurine up on my shelf in the kitchen that I just keep year round. And obviously at this time of year, if somebody came in, I've got stuff all over the place, but yeah, I don't necessarily feel like I need to keep stuff out because I'm quite happy. I'm more of that tradition where I'll use a knife for chopping my veg and for ritual purposes. It's like it's the same thing. I'm the magic, so I don't need like a special thing. Special stuff's nice. It is nice, but I don't feel necessarily that I need it. So yeah, there are little hints here and there, I would say, if you know what you're looking for. And also in things like the way I do things, I always stir food clockwise. I always I won't let anyone cook if they're in a bad mood. I'm like, you can't stir it until you have to be happy to do it, and little things like that. Yeah. And scents. I'm big on scents and incenses that I burn for different things.
Yeah. It's when you unpack, like, and I know my little nieces, and I know I adore them, and all of our kids, I adore them, and I know when my little girls are like, Auntie Holly's magic, because there's always a crystal in my pocket or down my bra, There's always
crystals, obviously.
There's always something. There's always, you know, I was on that bloody Vinted app that bankrupted me. I was, you know, I brought a load of little tiny fairies the other day, which just dotted round the tops of my door. I have, when we got this house, and this is why the neighbours definitely think we're a bit cuckoo. When we came to look at this house, I planted a grid of crystals in the front garden. So while Chris is looking, I'm like digging up the soil, lashing a crystal, because I was getting this house. That was it. For some reason they couldn't sell the house, and I think someone died in it or something. And we got the house. And when we came back and we got the keys, I was like they were some of my favourite crystals. You know, some of them are like 30, 40 years old. I didn't inherited them. I'm like popping them out. But there's things definitely around my home that I forget. And it was Jensen, my boy, had a birthday party, and I've got a room in my house, the blue room, that's got a lot of my mum's magical artifacts in, and her books and her diaries and her bits and bobs. And I remember one of my kids' friends' mum being like, "Oh, what's in there?" And I remember the horror of going, how do I explain why there's a crow skull on my mantelpiece? And I just came up with some like bullshit. Oh, would you like a piece of cake? And even I succumbed at that point to kind of hiding it, which is interesting, really, given this topic. What's in your house, Nat? Would you say that's a bit weird and wonderful?
Well, wherever I go, I always have my tarot cards with me in my handbag, so they travel me and they're always around. And if I'm going to someone's house, they'll always say to me, "Will you bring your cards with you?" But I think generally inside the house, probably the amount of candles and incense that there is around drives my son, who still lives with me, mad, because he goes, "Are you burning that horrible stuff again?" I've always got sage around for smudging, always. You know, you'll find random things, like for some reason I've got a spell book in my ensuite bathroom at the minute. Don't ask me how or why it got into the ensuite bathroom. There's a spell book in there. I must have been reading it on the loo at some point.
Good on you, girl.
Yeah. And I've also got a wand, which, of course, when anyone comes and will go, what's that wand? Automatically assume it's because I'm a Harry Potter fan, and I'm not a Harry Potter fan. It's just my wand, but everyone assumes that wands are to do with Harry Potter, so no one actually questions that, which is quite good. They just find my nut. So yeah, those are the kind of things: the tarot cards, the smells, the incense, and the toilet reading of spell books.
Love it. I remember once Tilly ran off with one of my mum's room, and they're made out of bone. Oh God, I should say that loud. Animal bone, not human bone. There's no bodies in Lucy's freezer. I've killed nobody, just to be clear, animal bone. And remember, the dog ran off with one in its mouth, and I was just like, no, they're like 50 years old. I can safely say Elizabeth's house is probably like Disneyland for those who are in, like, just a little glimpse beside her is, you know, our viewers can see that there's, yeah, I think we need to come to your house for a gathering very soon.
They're all my herbs.
Liz's house is probably like an Ollivanders or something to use the Harry Potter. What's in your home, or what isn't in your home, Liz?
I don't even know where to start. I've got
it will be until one
behind me, and they're all like my medicinal, spiritual herbs and stuff like that. And then, I mean, obviously I do cook with some of these ones, but these are like my magical cooking ones and stuff, my special ones really. And then ones that I make medicines out of. I have another herb unit over there, which are the ones that I allow other people to use when they're cooking. So like, these are the ones that no one can touch. I have little jars that the family can touch when they're cooking and stuff.
I've seen you shout.
Herbs everywhere, really. I have my big cooking pots, my big cauldron cooking pots all over the kitchen as well. I mean, there's one right here next to me.
Oh,
just like that.
I need one of that.
And here's one I made earlier. Boing.
Eyeballs in it or anything? Or worms?
Cooking it. That's my cooking pot.
She does. I can compare.
Not with eyeballs.
Do you remember when, I know obviously won't give out the address, do you remember when you lived at that other, I'm pointing like it needs anything, towards the big Asda?
Yeah.
Yeah, with But remember that you make this stew thing that's sweet, and I always go, what's the recipe? And I always forget it. But I remember coming round to your house, and it was this big cauldron. And I'm like, and it's just when Liz and I first met, and I'm like, this chick's actually cooking something in a cauldron. And I'm thinking, what the hell? And it was just on like a normal stove. It wasn't like on a fire. And I'm like, wow. And then I thought, well, maybe it's like mulled wine or something. There was a full-on dinner in there. I was like, yes, Liz. So I can concur.
That's a cauldron, though, isn't it? That's what it's for.
That's what it's
why
for.
they use that for spells, because that's what you would have in the house. So that's like what I was saying before about just using your everyday stuff. Yeah, it's just a cooking pot that you use for something else. Yeah.
I want one now.
And then obviously,
I do really want one though. They're just gorgeous though, aren't they? The big cast iron cauldrons, they're just beautiful.
Yeah, I've got 3 of them in this house at the minute, and then loads of little ones as well.
I dread to think what you're going to pull out next. What else is under that table? Leave it there.
All my herb making stuff is in here, like all my equipment for making my medicines is in the cupboardy bits underneath. And no one's allowed in them either. Like this unit's completely off limits to the children and hopes and the dogs and stuff. They're not allowed near that. But yeah, I do have duplicates for them to use in the other side of the kitchen because I'm not mean. Do you know what I mean? They're allowed sacred herbs too.
Not mean.
They're just not allowed my sacred herbs.
So, the fact that us women are having this conversation, the fact that we have our own rituals around Halloween, Samhain, do you think that by opening conversation, we have weaved a little bit more magic into this? Because don't you think it's interesting that our kids learn spelling? Like it's like there's the symbology. And I really must just backtrack. I said, when Lucy said before, well, I am the magic. And yes, you flipping are. Mm-hmm. And are we rhetorical? Are we magic doing things, or do we do things that are magic? And, by us having this conversation right around this time, is this creating an energetical signature? Are we weaving something right now? And I always find it so interesting that how the energy is connected in every single way. Will you be doing something on the actual night itself? What time of the evening do you maybe have a solitary practice? Is there something that just you do that's, your kids aren't involved? Is there a moment in the actual, just getting into the ritualistic side of it, because we all follow probably different paths in a sense. What is your one ritualistic thing that you would like to stand out that works for you on this special day or night? Do you celebrate more in the night as well? I would probably say yeah. So, Nat, do you do anything that's a bit...
Not so much on the day, I wouldn't say, because I'm always at a birthday party.
Yeah, you're just having cake with your lovely mum.
But the good thing is that quite a lot of the times, if we're out, because it's Halloween, and if we're out at a restaurant, there's normally a psychic or a mystic or something. So there's always something that Halloween-y connected to it. But I'll always do a card reading to see if anything interesting shows up. But yeah, and it tends to be at the night time, I would say, when it's dark and you get
mysterious.
I think, in the dark.
I'm going to this year. My kid's he's going to a party, so he won't be back till about 8:30, 9. I have decided this year that I am going to revisit one of my mum's workings. I found it in one of her journals. She practiced solitary for a number of years, but she also practiced within wider groups. She kind of flitted between, and I found something that she wrote very recently when I was sort of putting this together, and it's something that she did as solitary. So I'm going to do that this year. So I'm really looking forward to terrifying the neighbours in the garden. No, wait, will you be doing anything that's just so for you, Lucy?
Yeah, I'm big on the bath, to be honest. So I'm going to set myself up a ritual bath, and I'll probably be doing. I'll see how I feel at the time. Probably clary sage will be involved. The clear seeing essential
Love
oil. I like to do some form of divination. I quite like to do like a tarot spread, and I might do those for the children as well earlier on. And I essentially like to get into like a deep meditation if I can, and see what comes in. I think it's one of those times when you can kind of just open yourself up and go, okay, let's just see what insights come to me, and I try and make a space for those to come in.
Yeah.
So earlier there's like a family time earlier in the evening. We'll trick or treat as well. I think that's good fun. We get dressed up, we have a bit of fun, we have a special meal, and as I said before, I'll set a plate out for any ancestors. But yeah, the bit for me is going to be the bath, the ritual bath, the candles, the dark, the oils, and then the connection sort of with myself, and just to see what comes in.
Magical. It really is magical.
Forward to that.
It sounds sublime. I'm hoping, as the veil is very thin, certainly towards in my practices, certainly towards 11:30ish is when I tend to go into my space. I'm really looking forward to connecting with my maternal line, those that have passed. So my mom, my grandma, my nan, and as weird and as woo as it might sound, I know that there'll be a moment in time that our energies will connect on a different plane, or however you view it. And that, to me, there's a sense of, for me, what Halloween does represent to me. So it's a feeling of home as well, because I might be in different places in time, space, whatever. But in that particular moment, I know that the three females, the three faces of the goddess, maybe you could say, that we will all connect. Oh, I've got goosebumps. So that's what I'm looking forward to. What are you doing, Liz?
Oh, wow.
Well, what aren't you doing?
Mine even's very similar to Lucy's, to be honest. We start off with trick-or-treating for the little ones. We do an ancestral meal, leave a place out for the ancestors, and get them to bed after all their fun and
Sweet
enjoyment.
Sweets,
And then
yeah.
it's our time then. So I will commune. I do communion with the ancestors. I spend time in solitude with them. I enjoy a good ritual bath in the dark with just the candles going as well, and meditation. It's all very much about the ancestral work for me at Samhain, and communicating with them, taking that down, doing some divination, communicating with my gods as well, the gods that I work with. Yeah, and I'll do that outside, and then we bring it inside too. So yeah, it tends to go on most of the night, to be honest with you.
Our neighbours love us.
Well, traditionally, Samhain actually started at sunset. So we spend the day in preparation, and then that's when we really, really start things going, and it will go right the way through then.
Have you ever been to a sacred site during this festival? Because I spent time at Ep1 one year. I've also been up Glastonbury Tour one year. I've also celebrated in sort of mid Wales on some land there, and I've had interesting experiences at different places. Is there any places that, if you could be at, you would go to? If you could, if you could be there, teleport, blink yourself there, where would you go to, Lucy? Halloween, if you could be anywhere. Or would you stay at home?
I probably would stay at home if I got my bath. I mean, like, if I could click my fingers and have like a sunken bath, like
in a forest,
water pouring, that kind of, something really fancy, that'd be great. But essentially, I want to be in the bath and in my own space. So yeah, particularly home, with Liz saying, it's a home thing. Yeah, I want to be at home really for it. It does feel like that kind of festival. Yeah,
it does, with the fires on, cats. You're gonna have to lend a cat, Nat. You can have Brian for the night if you want.
Oh, I love Brian. He's lovely.
Just couldn't guarantee that the local bird population would make it. So, because he's decimated around here.
I've seen him with balls.
Oh, he's
And
vile.
up
He's
his
vile.
white, yeah, all covered in blood.
Covered in blood. It's vile. It's vile.
He makes
So-
it look good though, doesn't he?
He does, like all true cats must. So, oh, we haven't touched on, and it would probably be our last topic, Mischief Night. Now, I grew up with it, Mizzy Night. It was always a thing in our house. My mother would be like, we will play pranks on people. She would always cover mirrors as well. The mirrors were always covered in our house on Mischief Night. We wouldn't.
And yet nowhere else practices it.
It's
Like
not
I
right.
moved up there, and when I
was
moved to the
totally new to
northeast,
me.
they all thought I was taking the biscuit out, and they thought we were having a laugh when we were saying
can
talking about
swear.
midnight. Because I'm like, right, tape up the letterbox. It's Mischief Night. I'm not taking any chances. And they're like, what? You're taping up your letter? What the hell is Mischief Night?
There is. I seen something the other week that it is steeped. Let me just bring it up.
It's here and in America as well. America has traditions of it. Maybe it's because we were a port town, so that tradition came over to here first, and we've continued it. It also does have some traditions, where if they went stolen and you didn't give them the money in return for the prayers for the dead and stuff, mischief would happen afterwards and so on. So I suppose it ties in like that really to the wider festival. But yeah, most places don't actually celebrate it other than Liverpool Mischief Night.
No, it's totally new to me when I moved to Liverpool.
Really?
Oh yeah, and then so you've got to watch out on Mizzy Night, and I'm like, on what?
I love Mizzy Night. So it's celebrated in New Orleans, Eastern Pennsylvania, Delaware, some parts in New York State, Connecticut. It's known as Goosey Night, Cabbage Night over there. Wow, I thought it was like a thing.
No.
So in some parts of the country, Mischief Night is held on 30th of October. The separation of Halloween tricks and treats seems to develop in certain areas, only appearing in one region, but not all nearby regions. Wow. So in Yorkshire, it's shortened to Miggy Night, Tic Tac Night. It's Northern England seems to be in and around the city of Liverpool. Mischief Night is known as Mizzy Night. And in Welsh, I can't say it, but there's a Gaelic. Wow. I genuinely thought everyone did Mizzy Night.
No.
Wow.
In China, they have Tomb Sweeping Day.
Pardon?
In China, they have Tomb Sweeping Day.
Really?
It's like Day of the Dead kind of thing, but it's tomb sweeping in China.
Wow.
Yeah. And then there's other places abroad that get the dead out, don't they? Like take them out of the tombs, take them for a parade around the town, and you know.
I watched something on this. I watched something on this the other day, and there was a dead old lady. They put a cigarette in her mouth. She was having a whiskey. She had a little bonnet on, and I'm like, wow. I know I've got a broken leg and I'm on some painkillers, but this shit crazy. What the? And they parade the people. Is it like you know? And I feel like we need to Google it. Let me just Google it because I don't want to do it wrong. They literally parade the dead. Is it like in the Philippines or somewhere?
Somewhere like it's I can't even remember where it is now. I wrote about it ages ago. I did a blog on it years ago now. I can't remember where it was.
It's a legit thing. Parade
and then back up in their old clothes and
it's very
things.
ceremonial, yeah.
And they put them in the cars.
Nice fancy outfits they get for them. They have big feasts, like lay out big feasts for them. Kind of like what we do, where we set the table, put them a place out, we just leave the body in the grave. Or the process went through. Indonesia or Taiwan, someone saying in the comments.
Yes, I think it was Indonesia. Thank you,
like
Susan.
That,
yeah, I think I don't know if it was a vice one or something, but they had them like one. How do they bend them? But they had this dead person in a car, and they were all like looked like they were all taking selfies, and because we treat the other world and death, certainly here in the West, with such somberness, it was so interesting to see. It was a celebration, and that really brings me back to the veil is thin, and we call our ancestors. But wow, I'm so glad that someone's mentioned that because he did it. She had like a ciggy, a little glass of whiskey, a little hat, and I'm like,
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, we're so detached from the dead in our culture. We've totally forgotten about our dead. The only time we honour them is periodically when we go and put flowers on the grave. As a wider culture, we're scared of death in the UK. We're quite intimidated by it, and we keep it at a distance. I say, oh, don't talk about that in front of the kids and stuff like that. It's very like, it's not embraced as like part of life, whereas it is. It's part of life cycle. And it is a natural part of life cycle. And other cultures do embrace that aspect of the dead, really. They bring it in, they have it as part of their everyday lives, and it's just a normal part of their day-to-day lives, their day-to-day rituals and how they go about their lives. Their dead and their ancestors are part of it all day, every day. So getting them out of the grave, giving them a bit of a spruce up, dusting off the bones, that kind of stuff, it's not unto them.
My granddad, we used to be more in touch with it, but now the vast majority of people will die in the hospital, and it's like we're trying to stop it from happening, which obviously, yes. But people used to die at home, like people used to give birth at home. My granddad talks about, and this would again probably be the wise woman tradition, there would be the women, because he grew up in a tiny village in Yorkshire. The women, as he said, who would do the births and the layings out. So if you died, the local women would come in, they'd wash you off and prepare you, and that was like something that would be done within the community. You would look after your own in the same way that when it came time for the baby to be born, the local women would come around to help. He has a really good tale of that, actually. There was one fella, this is what he was saying, my granddad's like 103 or something now, and he was always saying he wants to be cremated, and somebody actually asked him, well, why is that? And he's going, well, he remembers this fella who died when he was a kid, and the women came round to lay him out, and he sat up. They all ran out screaming. Obviously, he wasn't dead. He was like, because I'd hate to actually be buried, and it turned out that I was wrong. At least they'd notice, wouldn't they, if they were cremating you? Like, okay, logical.
And is that why one of our dear friends unfortunately lost their father-in-law not long ago? And I'm from an Irish Catholic family, but we traditionally you would have the coffin at the home, and you would go and like kind of in Judaism you keep Shiva, where you sit with the dead. But nowadays, when my friend said, "Oh, the coffin's at home," I was like, "Oh my God." Someone who's into ghosts and the paranormal, I was like, "Whoa." And I had such a visceral reaction to it. And actually, we've started treating the dead in such a clinical way, haven't we? That's a whole can of worms.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun. Wow. I really want to find this article now of this lady. I'm going to definitely have a little look at it after this show. So we've learned a couple of things as we've explored some Halloween, girls, haven't we? We've touched on what it means to us. Some of the rituals that we do. I think we've also really not stumbled. We've definitely not even scratched. We've danced on the whole, what happened to these women, and I'm certainly going to delve into that a little bit more, because it's not something that feels good to delve
There was a
into.
recent project in Manchester where they actually found out an awful lot of the women's names and did a big honouring project. They set her up, you could go. And I'm pretty sure just bear with me a minute and I'll find it for you.
Yeah, definitely send me the
get
link.
the names right, you see. Let me see what it's called now.
So while Liz is having a
bringing
look at
bringing the Pendle witches back home. There's a group, and this year they're planning it again. Actually, I think they're walking the trail of the Pendle witches, loads of women together, and it's basically to bring the energy back home and stuff. They're doing it in reverse of the way that they went to the death. They're walking it the back way. So yeah. And I believe it's a 2-hour-long walk. It's aimed at over 18s because of the terrain and stuff like that, and the safety and everything. But if anybody's interested in that, you can contact the people running that, and I believe their contact address is the Cauldron of Curiosity.
We'll link it.
gmail.com.
We'll link it on our Facebook page, and I'll reach out to them because it's something I would certainly, I feel a bit called to actually now. We'll off show. We'll get that link and we'll link it to it on our Facebook page. But I certainly think I want to delve into the subject more. So thanks for sharing the space and sharing knowledge on that. So Halloween's on Monday, right? I'm so crap with dates. No, it's on Monday, and we're all going to celebrate it in our own way. And hopefully, some of our listeners and viewers have just had a little flirt of our knowledge in, what we're into. Next week we have a really cool show being put together. Look, our Nat's rubbing her hands already because it's a subject that she definitely will probably lead on because it's close to her heart. It's all around dun 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 cryptids. Did I say it right?
Cryptids, yeah.
Cryptids, shadow people, and mythical creatures. Which we're looking forward to. We'll be seeing Liz again really, really soon. We'll be roping her in on another show very soon. She doesn't quite know about it yet, but she's already confirmed and she'll do it. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Quick fire round. So Halloween. Put in 3. Okay, so it's your Halloween. We've got just a couple more minutes. You're having a Halloween meal, a Samhain meal, and you can invite 3 ancestors from history to celebrate the night with you. Who would you have round your table, Lucy? Oh.
And do they have to be related to me?
No, they can just be dead people.
Okay. Oh, well, you see, I'd have to have my dad. Be nice to see him again. And my grandma, who died when I was very small, probably only maybe 4. But I have a lot of memories of her, despite how young I was. And mainly, I just remember how she made me feel. So it would be absolutely amazing to be able to actually have a chat with her and connect and as an adult. I have a feeling she was a beautiful Irish lady. I have a feeling she would have a lot of good stories. And in terms of my third, that would be really tricky.
A wild card. Just a
wild card, yeah. Oh, I know. Terry Pratchett. He's long been on my fantasy dinner party list because Terry Pratchett's stories of witches come so close to the way I think about it. I used to read those as a teenager and just be like, this all makes perfect sense. Just the way he writes about it. It's just beautiful.
Awesome. You know what, Lucy?
That'd be fun.
Knowing you like I do, I don't think your grandma's ever that far away from you either. I think she comes out in some of the work that you do. And I mean that. I think she's around.
Yeah.
Nat, who would you have at your Halloween dinner party? You get to pick 3 people.
I'd have
preferably dead.
Nana and Grandpa.
Oh.
Definitely. My wild card choice. Oh, it's so hard. There's so many people. Someone really out there like Hendrix.
He'd make good for entertainment, wouldn't he?
Yeah, someone out there like him or Prince or someone.
Prince, we do Prince.
Yeah.
Liz, who would you have, my love?
Obviously my nans. I was very close to both of them, and probably Crowley because I would love.
Oh, you stole me, guess.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Bitch. I'm coming your party.
Yes. I would just love to pick that man's brain sometimes, some of the stuff that they get up to.
Oh, and that's the show that we're going to ask you to come back on. So you've just pipped on that one. Friends of mine, new friends of mine, not you know of them. They have been to Boleskine and filmed a documentary and meditated in the area where he did that Abraham ritual because he didn't actually close down. I'm not going to get into it. So yeah, you've robbed me guess. So if it was mine, it would have been me mum, for obvious reasons. Crowley, and I would have Sybil Leek, because I think those two knew each other. So I think that would make for an interesting one. And we just need to get Prince just to come and do his thing.
A bit of background music.
Just just a little bit, not nothing monumental. But have a great Halloween. Have a great night. I hope you connect with all that's meant for you on that night. We will be back next week from 8 o'clock live. Thank you everyone that's engaged with us. Thank you everyone that's took the time out to drop a note. We're feeling our way through this weirdness ourselves, and thank you for the support. So we're going to be signing off very, very shortly. But yeah, girls, you got anything you want to add? Nothing like a bit of pressure.
Just to say happy Halloween to everyone.
Yes, Samhain blessings, and thank you for having me on.
Well, we'll be seeing you really soon. So thank you. Stay safe on Halloween. Don't be doing no Ouija boards, guys, unless I'm there. But yeah, take care. Have a good one. Stay super weird. Like and subscribe. Tell all your mates, and we'll see you all soon.